This program is presented by Community Television. A simulcast can be found on WRFP-LP 101.9 FM.
Welcome to the Chippewa Valley Sustainable Future Festival. Tom and Laurel Kiefer present A Journey Toward Living Green.
And I'd like to introduce Tom and Laurel Kiefer, who are our first speakers, and they have a prepared blurb here for me, so I'm going to read that for you. Tom and Laurel in 1991 left a secure, normal life to realize their dreams. Laurel's to create a sustainable family farm business, Tom's to create family housing and farm structures attuned to energy efficiency and sustainable living. With 3 young children, they purchased a 163-acre property with all the buildings valued at $19,000 in total. The property had great potential with a beautiful valley, ponds, pastures, overlooks, and woodlands. 21 years later, our journey at Dream Valley Farm continues to unfold with many stories to be told. Thank you.
Well, thank you. It's a delight to be here. Thank you for allowing us to share. And we're going to start out with talking about it. Living green, which we have a long way to go yet. We have certainly are just getting started as a journey, but really not a destination. and I think part of the framework that we want to lay out is about this notion of sustainability. And sustainability is a big picture. And Tom and I were involved in a group out of College of Ag and Life Sciences in Madison for several years called Center for Integrated Agricultural Systems, and we were on the Citizens Advisory Council for that. I served as president of that council for a few years, but one of our major struggles on that whole business was how do you define sustainability? And I don't think we ever came up with a definition that really fit. So it evolved, continues to evolve. For us, when we talk about sustainability and trying to live green, it's a combination of things like health of us, of our animals, of the geography of the land, the topography of the land, the plants, the soils. And, so you're thinking about the health of the actual soil from this very rich stuff that we so depend upon. But we also think about sustainability from a financial income basis. You can't live someplace if you can't pay the bills. And you can only live so long in a house where there are rats in the walls and and you're putting pails on the inside of the house to catch the rainwater because the roof's leaking and you can't, and the house doesn't merit replacement, or the water freezes in the kitchen sink every winter. Those kinds of things. You have to be able to have funds, especially when you have 3 little kids, to to get past that. And so that's part of the sustainability picture. But also, sustainability to us, I think, means community, the community network, the collaboration, the relationships, and also just going further on interconnectedness. That we can't do this in isolation. And I think there have been movements that have come with sustainability movements and green movements where people have gone, they bought a piece of land, and that they all kind of made the community. And they're still really intentional communities. We have a lot to learn from them. But all in all, this planet is a big thing, and we can't live in isolation. And so what is that community and interconnectedness about?
And it has to do with beauty as well, and aesthetics. It's part of it. So to move into our history a little bit, brief history of where we've been, where we've come from. I first kind of became aware of this whole aspect of things, or this whole way of looking at things in the 1970s. If you remember the Arab oil embargo, I think it was 1973 is when that happened, and then there was a big uproar, nationwide uproar, really concern about our dependence on foreign oil, and we have to do everything we can to get past that and to conserve, and the whole sort of idea of using alternative sources of energy started to rise up at that time. That was my beginnings as well. That's where my awareness started, and shortly thereafter, I think it was the early 1980s, we linked up with this group called High Wind, and they were really we were kind of involved in the original formation of this. It became an intentional community up in Sheboygan County, and I'll just read their credo because it speaks a lot to where I've always felt I'm at in terms of maybe philosophically. It's short. The High Wind Credo: to walk gently on the earth, to know the spirit within, to hear our fellow beings, to invoke the light of wisdom, and to build the future now. That was how they defined themselves, and I helped build this bioshelter, which was their vision of a self-sustaining living habitat, where it has one section which was a large greenhouse including aquaculture, and a lot of ideas that, you know, since that time have really been kind of mainstreamed, and it's fairly easy for people to do a lot of this stuff nowadays if you want to, because of the wealth of knowledge that started to get built back in those days by people like this. And so that's kind of where I start. Another thing, as far as my history, besides being interested in the whole renewable energy and efficient house building and all that kind of stuff, my recollection is that's when we've all heard the term New Age, and nowadays it's used for a variety of different things. This is, I believe, when that term was actually coined, and it had to do with this kind of a perspective on the world and on life and on how we all fit together. And so.
A little bit about my history. I grew up on a small dairy farm in southern Wisconsin, and my father was very much involved in conservation farming practices, and he walked gently on the land, and we had a very small dairy farm, and we were not wealthy by any means, but it was very much about the family is core to our farm. I knew that my contributions to the farm were absolutely vital for the success of our farm, and so as did my siblings, and my father practiced conservation practices, land contour farming, and was very reluctant to put chemicals into the land. And he was also one of the founding members of the Dane County Regional Planning Commission, and he worked with the Wisconsin Towns Association trying to stop power lines from taking over lots of farmland in the southern part of the state of Wisconsin. And so he was very much an activist. I mean, I remember our house having have bullet holes through our windows because people were not happy with the activism that my father was part of. You know, so, and it's not unlike some of the sand mine kinds of things that are happening today. I mean, the neighbors against neighbors kind of stuff. And so I grew up in this family that was not wealthy, very grounded to the land, very grounded to the environment, very grounded to the greater good. My dad served up the town board. He was very involved in poverty and food justice and all of that long before that stuff had a name. And so that's the kind of family that I grew up with. So my personal culture, and of course gardening and living off our farm as much as we could. So when we met, we actually met through church, and then we started to connect very deeply with the Association for Humanistic Psychology, which at that time was a real bed of innovation and of thinking about sustainability and peace movement and holistic health and alternative medicines and all this kind of stuff. And that was early 80s. So forward. Okay.
And just to, before you move on,
yeah.
One thing that you said, that I grew up in a family that was not poor, not rich, but not poor, but a strong memory that I have of my growing up was an attitude that someone who's a farmer is a person who just isn't capable of doing anything else, and so this is what they ended up having to do. kind of like, you know, if there's somebody who's at the bottom rung, it's farmers. That was the attitude in the family that I grew up in.
So you can imagine what happened when Tom, with his master's degree in business administration, decided to farm. What the family reaction was to that. It wasn't pretty.
They knew I was nuts.
Well, she married me. It was me. It was all about me. It was definitely me. So we need to move a little bit faster than we are. We're not going to make it. This is this is the picture of the house that we moved into. And we said earlier that we had a 160 acre property that we bought, and it had end total. So you can imagine
and
what
the acreage, the whole. I mean, no, the whole thing.
The whole thing. You know, I mean, this would be. So we spent $50,000 for this 163 acres and 8 buildings in 1991. So it's very different now. So we started with this, and literally there were rats in the walls. We moved into this place, and it was
and literally the roof leaked badly enough that there was one place, because we knew we were going to take it down. You know, we had this dream, we were going to build a house. There were rain gutters that I had to hang inside the house to catch the water that was leaking through the roof.
And then we just mop at the end after every rainstorm. Mop it out the doors. It was an interesting life experience. Our kids, when we moved into this, our kids were 4, 5, and I think 6. 4, 5, and 7. 4, 5, and 7. So it was a life-changing experience for them because we came out of a very lovely, privileged background into this. Just very briefly about the dream, and then Tom, fill in here. We wanted to create an industry for small family farms where family, on 160 acres, you could actually make a living. So that was part of our dream. I wanted very deeply to build a business, create a business that our kids could be part of. And we wanted our kids to be players and to be partners in building a family business. And we also had, and this is kind of coming back to the Sustainability Green, a mantra. There are 2 mantras that our kids heard much more than they probably ever wanted to. And one is just enough is plenty, and whatever you do, do for the greater good, or the good of the all. And
as we were going along, and because financially the early years were tough, so another common question was, is this a need or a want?
And we didn't have the money to do more than the need. Some other things that mantras, do with what you have, find joy in your work. And there were a lot of times when we had so much work to do that we didn't have time for play, so it was how do we make our play, our work become our play. And for our kids, when they're in junior high and high school, say, well, we're going to do this and this and this. And I said, well, you know, we have to get this done. And if we're going to spend quality time together, get your boots on, come out in the barn, we're going to be working together for the next 4 hours, and we'll have plenty of time to talk while we work. And
yeah, and just very briefly, so we can try to keep moving. It was a stressful time for me for several reasons. One, I had to learn some of the stuff that Lori just described that the kids had to learn because of my background. Secondly, when we moved, I became the primary parent, so I was the at-home dad. And back in 1991, there weren't many at-home dads, very few. And my community, the community that we moved into, definitely thought that we were a bit strange. It's, you know, there was, it was pretty obvious to them that there was something not normal about us. So.
Okay. Oops. Sorry. Don't want to do that. I'm going to do this. Here we go. All right. So this is where our house. This is our house.
That's where the house is going to be. You can see it there, though.
Can you see the vision? The vision is there.
But yeah, this was a big part of our dream for me, was to be able to design and build an energy efficient house with the ultimate goals of being completely self-sufficient, being off-grid and energy independent. I had a big part of my focus was energy, although not entirely, but that was probably a big central part of my focus. So we determined that this was where we wanted to build that house, and then as soon as we did that, we said, well, okay, if the house is here, that means that the bonfire pit is going to be right here. So we built the bonfire pit.
That was the first thing we built. And we would go out to the campfire with your critters, and sometimes it would be deer, and sometimes it would be coyotes, or sometimes it would be other things, and that was. But okay, do you want me to do the next slide on?
Yeah.
Okay, so
here's the house with some construction going on, but it's a super insulated, earth integrated, passive solar. What else?
collect all the rainwater.
Yeah, we collect all the rainwater. It's the rear, if you remember that picture of the hillside, that's a pretty steep hill. So the rear wall of that house is actually 2 stories deep into the earth. So essentially the whole back of the house is buried into the hillside. So it's very earth integrated. I put in earth tubes, which are devices where you can pull outside air into the house. It's a long, large tube that goes down under the ground and then comes up in vents in the house and tempers the temperature of the air. So if it's really hot in the summertime, by the time the air comes in those tubes, it's more like earth temperature, or closer to it anyway. And the same in the winter, when it's 20 below zero, the air that you're pulling in as replacement air for the house is a little bit warmer. So did that. It has a continuous vapor barrier, so any ventilation is what we provide, not what the various cracks in the house provide.
When you do that, do you have to worry about, what about radon when you're sucking that air out of the earth? Is that a problem? Is there a way?
Well, I'm not pulling it out of the earth. It's tubing that passes through the ground.
Okay.
So I'm not actually pulling air out of the earth. The air starts above ground.
There's a
and it's
vent.
pulled through those tubes.
There's a little vent, little housed vent thing behind the house here. So the tubes come in, go around the house and come in the greenhouse and come in the. So there's 4 vents, so they come in.
So then, do you heat is your heat forced air, hot air, and not water, or not hot water?
We have hot water tubing underneath the poured concrete floor, so that would be supplemental heat. The main heat source is the sun. The secondary heat source is a single wood burner in the central area of the downstairs of the house, and then we can also provide heat through the floor as needed.
The first 12 years we lived in that house, we had nothing but our wood burner and the passive solar, and we burn less than 2 cords of wood a year. In the winter time in this greenhouse, when a sunny day, that gets up to 80-85 degrees in the greenhouse, and so we just open up all the windows and the greenhouse heats the house, and I can sit out there in as little as I want and thoroughly enjoy the sun.
So on the energy side, you can see the slope of this roof. One of the things that I really got into when I was designing the house is, this is back before there was really anything available in terms of fancy computer programs and stuff like that. So I had all these thick books written by all these engineers that I'm pouring through and trying to transfer their formulas into a spreadsheet. Spreadsheets were available at that time. They were kind of rudimentary, but they were there, and to do all the calculations. But anyway, the slope of this roof is ideal for this latitude. There's kind of a plus or minus, but it will work well for solar heat collection, so for like a solar hot water system, as well as for solar electric. So that's why the roof of the house is that way. If we ever have the finances, we can cover that roof with photovoltaic panels and generate a lot of electricity. We did put up a small wind system on a guide tower, meaning a pole with cables, and within 2 weeks after it went up, we had a major shift. Overnight, there was this huge cold front that came through, and the temperature dropped by, I don't remember.
Well, it was
how
in
many
December.
degrees.
It was like 50 or 60 degrees.
It just went plummeted, and it was windy. I came out in the morning, and the tower was like this.
It was
And
gone.
the wind system was crashed to the ground.
And we had not
And-
written it onto our insurance policy yet. So,
So that kind of ended that. Again, it was a financial thing. We couldn't afford to replace it. So I kept the battery banks for a while and the inverter, and you know, kept the batteries charged, and the when a storm would come through, we'd have to look around the neighborhood to tell if the power went out or not, because ours never went out. So that was nice, you know. But
just another caveat about the house, the
Yeah.
entire house is double wired for AC and DC both.
Right.
So at any point we could go back to a direct current if we...
it's not double wired, but
But
it's wired with extra large wire so that it's possible to run on 24-volt electrical.
One more just quick thing about here, and then I'm going to move to the next slide, is that we didn't have the money to put in a kitchen for the first 15 years that we lived there. So we now have a kitchen. We've had a kitchen for 3 years, and it's been wonderful. And we did a lot of entertaining.
Cook all the time.
We just cook all the time now, but we did before then, you know. And it's like when I'm doing my canning and preserving now, and what some of the young people that have been with us for 7 years or more that are farm help. And the other day Kelsey was in there, and she was looking at it. She goes, "I just don't know how you guys did all the canning and the work that you did before this kitchen." I can't understand it. Can I go, or you want to say anything
Yeah,
more?
just one other thing. Another small feature is the overhangs, which are in front of all the glass. Under here, under this overhang, and this down here overhang here is just as long as that, but the greenhouse can't see it. It's all glass, and those overhangs are designed so that in the hot part of the year, they shade the sun from ever entering the house, and in the winter time the sun shines right in.
Okay. Whoops, I keep doing the wrong thing here.
Just use the right arrow.
I know. I just...
I'll just get rid of that.
Now, okay.
There we go.
Briefly.
So we tried to use environmentally responsible materials as much as we could. Again, back in the early 1990s, those kinds of materials were hard to find. I had to pester the lumber yard that I bought materials through for I think over a month before they finally were able to locate the fiber cement siding that I wanted to use on the outside of the house. And they finally did find it. The only stuff available at that point in time was made by the Hardy Company in California. So they had to bring the siding in, figure out how to get that siding in from, I mean, they distributed it, the company did, but anyway, they had to figure out how to get a hold of that stuff because they'd never heard of it before. And that sort of thing. This particular picture is a picture of this is the floor of our new kitchen. So this is a more recent picture, but it's actual linoleum, real linoleum, which is made out of linseed and jute, all renewable resources that are sustainable, I guess you'd say, or they replenish themselves quite easily.
And no off-gassing. And that's another thing we're really being conscious about, off-gassing. We don't have any carpet in our house. And that's,
Yeah.
you know, I mean, that's except wool rugs or cotton rugs or whatever like that.
We used a steel roof for two reasons. One, so that we could collect the rainwater, and we have a 1,500 gallon cistern, a tank. It's an enclosed tank that's buried in the ground underneath the gutters of the house in the back. So we can collect roughly, well, on the huge back roof, about an inch. If we get an inch of rainfall, that will approximately fill up that 1,500 gallon cistern, and then we can use that. It's plumbed in so that we can flush the toilet downstairs, do the laundry, and then we have exterior faucets so we can water the plants and all that kind of stuff. It's, you know, I wouldn't use it for drinking.
Here's the caveat: we have this, but we don't use it that way. So we don't have the toilet hooked up downstairs. And I'm thinking this morning that, you know, what is there any good reason why we don't have that downstairs toilet hooked up to the cistern?
No,
there really isn't. So
there isn't.
So I mean,
and that's something that occurred. That brings up a point that occurred to us as we were doing this. Going, you know, we could probably make a longer list of stuff that we haven't done to be green than the list of stuff that we have done.
Yeah.
You know.
And I think another thing just to think about before I go into this next section is that all along here there were decisions. We didn't have a lot of money when we were building this house. That's why it's not finished still. But, you know, trying to, you know, that part of the struggle of doing this sustainable living thing is prioritizing where your money's going to go. You know, and a steel roof is a hell of a lot more expensive than a shingle roof. Putting in the cistern, the siding that we had to to California to get the siding that we wanted because it was fit our values. You know, I mean, all of these things were in the minds of our family and other people. You guys totally have gone off the deep end, you know, kind of thing. But, you know, this constant struggle, and I think that continues on all the way through, this constant balance and this rub to try to do what you think is right and for the greater good, and the realities of the finances, the realities of the work and labor that it means, the reality of the commitment, you know, all of that stuff. That's a constant rub and a constant battle. And, you know, I don't take military showers. I should. You know, I mean, it's like there's all this kinds of stuff, and I keep trying to get Tom to shut the water off when he brushes his teeth, and he's getting better. You know, I mean, it's those, I don't know. One of our kids has a solution with showers that she and her partner just take them together, and I mean, that works too. Should we go on to our family? If you can see, this is one of our Christmas cards one year that we did, and this is we really felt that our sheep were part of our family, but you can kind of see that there's some humans that are distributed into that. Again, that it was tough, but it was our family, and our family went into the community. Tom has worked really hard to try to buy local hay, local corn, local straw, organic when we can, as we can afford, trying to encourage the people that are supplying us with the hay to start thinking about, what about going into organics? What do you think about doing that? You know, and just that. A little more about values, and before and then I'll go on to the farm picture.
No, go on.
Okay.
Where did you find those long-legged sheep?
All right, I just threw these in here to give you a little sense of what our farm operation is, because that's a very critical piece of who we are. And the barn, this barn here, which you can see there, was built with a passive solar barn. It has in-floor heating for this is my nursery. This is where I spent a lot of my early January, February, March, April, from about 6 o'clock in the morning until about 9 o'clock in the morning, and then again from about 9:30 until 11. But this is a lot of my space here. This in-floor heat. Again, this is an opportunity to, gosh, at some point, wouldn't it be nice to hook that up to a passive solar hot water heater, so we could just heat the in-floor heat in the barn without having to go through things. But so Tom's designed this, upgrading the barn. I don't know, just started.
Our farm is a sheep dairy, so just to clarify, Lori said this is the nursery. Because it's a dairy farm, all the new lambs get taken from their moms at a very young age, and we raise them artificially, much like a cow dairy would do. That's why the nursery, because our sheep have 2 lambs apiece on the average, so we end up with a lot of lambs. We have 250 milking ewes, so okay.
I've got a very busy winter time. A lot of sheepies. Just a little bit about the farm journey quickly, and that is we've tried really hard to share it locally, regionally, nationally, and even internationally. We've been involved in when the kids were in grade school and middle, that we had a lot of farm events for early kids to come out and play in the ponds, look at catch tadpoles, do some microscope work with what's happening in the water and the different ecosystems. We have about 4 or 5 different ecosystems on the farm, and we do stuff at each. We have stations at each of the ecosystems that I would work with, and then the gardens. And then as it got older, we've had about over 25 young people that have been part of our farm crew over the last 12 years, and the kids, they're just amazing young people. We end up our kids end up recruiting help for us because they want to make sure the people that come on staff are people they can work with and are going to do the work. So we've never really had problems with team. We have 7 young people working with us right now. 2 of them are valedictorian type kids, I mean, so we get smart, good kids that come and work with us, which is just an amazing kind of thing. But when in the state, Tom was a founding member of the Wisconsin Sheep Dairy Cooperative, and that's been in place for 15 years, which is in milk marketing and cheese making. Those of you who've had the chance to have Dante cheese, which is our sheep cheese, comes out of WSTC. We've been involved with Wisconsin Sheep Breeders Cooperative, and the Center for Integrated Agricultural Systems, State Board of Directors, or Advisory Council, and DASANA, which is the Dairy Sheep Association of North America. I'm current president of that. And so trying to get involved. We've had people from most of the states in the country: Hawaii, Japan, Azerbaijan, France, Spain, England, Romania, whatever, New Zealand, Australia, have been on a farm as part of our affiliations. And so we have had opportunity to learn. We've had consulting expertise from dairy experts and from France who have been on our farm. We've worked with the University of Wisconsin in many efforts for students that were doing their dissertations, where we've been able to provide them a field experience for them, and then they've been able to give us back really good feedback.
And I think, just to bring it back to the issue of sustainability, it started with what Laurel has already mentioned, our kind of our goal, our dream of figuring out a way that a small family farm could actually be sustainable, could actually operate and provide a living for those who are running it, and continues to be a challenge. And things happen every year that sometimes up, sometimes down. So, yeah.
Okay, the next phase is the gardens and the landscaping and the beauty. Tom and I think that we have probably put in over 70 tons of concrete block walls on our place. And this was one of our finer moments, right?
The end of a long day, apparently.
Apparently. We're in pretty good shape. So there's a view from now. That's moving up to the house. Food and pleasure. I love the flower gardens, and I know, Ruth, you're a gardener, spot on type of thing. I know that, and so some of my heart. And gardens, a mix of flowers. I try to do. It's a lot of work. It's a lot of sacrifice of time, and it's a lot. It's sacrificing of, do I want to go having fun someplace else, and fun becomes the garden. So we've got in these terraces, and they're really wonderful for extended seasoning. I can take and pull, put plastic from here over and extend season. These little thingies up here are old sheep hay feeders that bit the dust, and we cut them in half, and now I use them for little hoop houses in the early spring for gardening, and in the late. And here, this is tomato cages now, and such. And I do, when I garden, do predominantly organic gardening. We compost a lot of our manure. Tom's become a really, really good at figuring out, we save certain piles of manure that don't have a lot of like grass or alfalfa or clover, and then he composts and he turns it, and we have a skid steer and he runs it through the manure spreader again, and so we come out with just amazing garden soil, and things grow just phenomenally. And you know, part of it, keeping the soil healthy and keeping the plants healthy, means that you don't have as much insect damage. You know, so when plants are when the soil is happy, when it's rich, and the soil's happy, the plants are happy, and the insects don't like happy plants. So there's less of that. Although once in a while I do have to do a little spraying with organic. I don't use a rototiller at all. I have a French deep dig fork that I deep dig all of the gardens, and have always done that, and that doesn't, there's no compaction, it just opens it up, and then I weed everything before I plant thoroughly, and then I plant, and then I don't usually have to do much weeding the rest of the season. So it's a really nice system. Some of my mentors were Findhorn Garden, Slow Foods Movement, Michael Fields Institute. There are a bunch of wonderful places that have done marvelous things. Okay, so this looks like a mess, but it really isn't. It's all intensive. I mean, yeah, it is kind of a mess, but it is. But it's all intensive stuff like cucumbers and beans and summer squash and tomatoes and dill, and like the companion planting intensive. I just let dill grow up where it wants. I let the sunflowers hang out wherever they want. If there's a bean that reseeds from the year before, I let that hang out, and I just kind of let it happen. So some of the things that we do, we put up probably 120 quarts of tomato juice a year, plus a lot of we freeze, we dehydrate, and Tom has recently gotten into making wine, so we have about 6 or 7 different fruit wines that we've made or in process of making. So we have fruits, vegetables, dairy. We haven't done chickens for a few years, but one year we did up to 1,000 free-range chicken birds that we sold. And then lamb. We also have wool. I take a certain amount of my wool, lamb's wool, sheep's wool that I get spun up every year, and I knit. And we have pelts, and then I'm doing some felted fabrics. So that's enough on that. And when we bring it all together, it's kind of fun. So this was actually a cheese table from our daughter's wedding last spring, and the flowers are from our garden. All of the cheeses are sheep cheeses. Some of them are from our co-op, or they're from friends of ours who I called. I said, oh yeah, we'd love to donate. Here, we'll donate. And they just kept sending cheese. So this whole thing is, it's at the Overture Center in Madison, and it was, we provided the lamb for the meal, and the cheeses, and the flowers. And it was really fun to be able to go from the wedding garden to the table, from the farm to the table, and it's the farm to school programs and all that kind of good stuff.
And the farm has actually turned a profit. Not every year, but
not this year.
Not this
the drought and stuff. It's going to be a tough year, but we have hope. It just gives us hope to move onward. Another thing that Tom and I have done in terms of sustainability, and I think a really important part of sustainability is planning. And we are really nuts about strategic planning and farm planning. And every other year, we take a 2 or 3 day retreat where Tom and I go to a hotel, and I bring my sticky notes and my easels, and and we lock the door so the people can't come in the hotel clean, because we have newsprint. We get a large room, and the whole hotel room is just
we do
full
our
of
own self-conducted planning session.
And that's worked for us. We've been able to get loans and keep the thing going. Oh, these are just some fun slides from now on about just family effort. This is our son David. David usually spends about 2 to 3 weeks with us in the spring and again in the fall, where we work on projects and just have a lovely time. He's 25, and he'll be coming home next week from a summer in New Hampshire before he heads to Colorado for his winter at Breckenridge. So
just a kind of a quick nuts and bolts kind of thing. This hardy board siding went on the house, I think in 95 or 4, something like that. It was unprimed, just the bare hardy board. And this was 2010.
2010 that we painted.
Is the first drop of paint that it ever saw. and it looked as good the day we painted it as it did the day I put it up. It's some really amazing stuff, and it's just made out of sand and cement,
Cellulose.
a little bit of cellulose, I think.
It's really cool stuff. It's really, and now we can get it. So when we built the garage,
Yeah, now you can run to Menards and get it. You know, so.
some more family doing terraces and doing terraces and decks. One of our philosophies with all of our kids, our farm kids and our own family kids, is there are no boy jobs and there are no girl jobs. Everybody does everything. And so that was a really hard thing with some of our kids, like from our high school, that came in, and they were going, well, that's a boy's job, or I can't lift that, it's too heavy. I said, well, if the bag is too heavy, you open the bag up and you take what you can lift. There are no boys. This is not the boys' job to help you do your work. And the same thing, then the guy said, well, those are the farm dishes. I said, nope, this is not, the dishes don't belong to the girls. Everybody does what needs to be done. And so that's been a really fun thing to build some feminism into the work, and I've been really good at pushing that.
As those who know her may imagine.
He's pretty good at it though too. He backs it up and goes some more, and maybe too much fun. This is
wine bottling day, yeah.
Those
of
are
course,
always,
you have to sample it on the day you bottle it.
Then mix it and match it.
Yes.
And we all, as a family, these are 3 kids. This is Cassie lives in Boulder area. David's moving between the West and East Coast. Missy lives in Portland right now, Portland, Oregon. And it's just, when we get together, we eat and we drink and we have a wonderful time. And they are, as adults, they are I think, our best friends. And as they bring special people in their lives.
And all 3 of them carry on the kind of philosophies that we had in their own ways, but it's kind of neat to see.
Part of our sharing our journey, I talked a little bit about the early elementary. This is one of my Eco-Fem classes. The last class that I have of the season is a celebration on the farm, and we do a local foods festival, and we do some connecting and interconnecting with animals and the environment. We do a meditative session out on the top of our overlook of our hill. And many of these young people I still have contact with. We have an incredible bonding experience in that class, and for those of you who know what when you really bond with a group of students and young people, and you get energy from them and they get energy from you. This young woman up here, this is I think from 3 years ago. Ava is from Latvia. She's one of our exchange students from Latvia, and Ava and I continue to have contact across the world. And whenever she's traveling, she'll go someplace and I'll get a postcard in the mail from Romania or from India or from, I don't know, wherever she is. She's all over. And then Tom, here's those monsters.
We do events on the farm. Oftentimes it's a benefit or a fundraiser for one purpose or another, nonprofit organization or our church community. This happens to be a picture of a dinner we did on the farm where we prepared and served a full course meal, and you can see outdoors in the yard and serve some of our homemade wine and have a really fun time with people that we know. This one is people from our church, and but it's a fundraiser, and we also do fundraisers for nonprofit or a couple different nonprofit organizations. And we've got a big family event coming up in a couple of weeks. My family reunion is taking place at our farm, so that'll be another big one. We like to have people out there.
So kind of start to conclude here a little bit, sustainability. Knowing the interconnections, being grateful, bringing things together. This young woman has been with us for 7 years. She's 24 years old, and she's been with us for 7 years living on our farm. She still wants to come back. Our other daughter, the connections. How can you not love somebody looking at you like that? I mean, she's just a beautiful little, lovely animal. And and being grateful. So I think that's a really important part. I don't know, is that being green? Maybe not so much about being green, but maybe about being sustainable. So how do you find gratitude amongst the connections and
I think for me, the connection. I've learned. I feel that I've learned to really appreciate the fact that all of nature, and that includes us, and includes all animals, plants, everything. We're all interconnected and all interdependent, and you see that, and you also feel how small and insignificant I am when you get a major storm that comes through, and you're at the mercy of it, or you have a drought, and
You're at the mercy.
what can you do? You can react to it, but
Just a couple more. Our next generation, this is our daughter Missy. She is now working. She's worked in the farm to school programs in Madison. She's done some farm to school work in Portland, and now she's is one of the things that she's doing as she's going to finishing up her massage therapy certification in Portland is she spends Saturdays at another farmer's market. She did the Dane County Farmers Market for a couple of years when she was down there. She's worked on a CSA farm while she was doing farm to school programming, and so now she got linked up with some friends of ours from Washington State, and she's selling their sheep cheeses at a Portland farmers market. So she just keeps going on that, and she and her partner have an urban garden with chickens in Portland. They have 3 chickens in the backyard of their very urban place, and she's a foodie, way deep. And just a couple more, just some visions of, on a farm day in the winter time, the animals still have to eat. So when we had those 24 inches of snow, we still had to feed them. We put on our snowshoes. I think that's the only time we really used our snowshoes at our farm. And I took feed out to one group of animals, and Tom took the snowshoes and went way out and brought another group back in, and they followed on the tracks that he made.
My snowshoe track.
And then I think just a little bit about
barn.
the beauty of the seasons: spring, summer, fall, and winter of our place. And that's who we are now. We have a lot of work to do yet. Our ponds need to be cleaned up. We need to be more active. We can't move forward in isolation. We try to be active with larger organizations. Mega corporations have the largest footprint and are often most resistant to change. How do we confront that? And I don't know, activism, advocacy, making the voice heard on the large scale, on the small scale.
So many factors. Factors like population growth and the continued environmental degradation that we see going on, food and water, impending shortages of drinkable water, and natural disasters. The scientists tell us that Yellowstone is past due, and things like that. And also, on the financial side, something that I think is part of it, which makes it very difficult for us and for a lot of people to try to live any kind of what you might call a sustainable lifestyle. The continuing, really since the 1970s, growth in the disparity of wealth, and it's been a constant one-way direction since at least the 1970s, and that's not sustainable for us as a whole. For we the big we, it's not sustainable.
So we try to keep more amidst the rubs and the challenges, keeping an optimistic perspective, doing what we can on a small scale, trying to figure out how do we influence the larger scale and be hopeful. So I think we used up our time. Do we have questions?
Real specific. Back to composting, you mentioned something about being careful with alfalfa or clover. Can you talk a little bit more about that?
mainly so that if something doesn't quite heat enough to actually kill the seed, so that Lori doesn't have all kinds of things growing in her garden.
Do you feel like your garden you've pretty much removed the weed seed bank?
No.
Oh, then how are you not having weeds with a open? Is your garden mulched?
Yeah, I mulch it, and I plant so intensively that once it grows, I mean, I'll weed some, but it's not like I have to weed intensively anymore. So yeah, it works pretty well. There are some weeds, but the weeds are things like lamb's quarter, which is a nice weed to have. It means your soil's rich, you know, or I'll let a few of those grow, and I'll let some of the dandelions grow because they kind of, you know, they bring nutrients up from the below, and you know, so I'm selectively letting things stay there. And if there's some things that I know attract flea beetles, I'll let them stay.
Yeah.
You know, so that they collect. So.
This program was recorded and presented by Chippewa Valley Community Television. Chippewa Valley Community Television is made possible by continuing community support. If you'd like to volunteer or make a donation, you can contact us by calling 715-839-5067 or on the web at www.cvctv.org.